Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're breaking down a really fundamental financial reality straight from our source material. We're looking at fact number 3, inflation reduces your money's value. We're going to unpack exactly how inflation messes with the real-world utility of the cash you're holding on to. Let's get right into it, and honestly, look at your savings in a completely new light.
Okay, let's dive into this by asking a question that might kind of challenge everything you've ever been taught about saving. Ready? Is your saved cash actually safe? I mean, we're all culturally conditioned to believe that a crisp bill tucked away in a drawer, hidden in a mattress, or just sitting idle in a basic checking account is perfectly secure, right? It feels safe because the number doesn't change. If you lock $100 in a physical safe, you expect to come back a year later and find exactly $100. And, well, physically you will. But safety isn't just about the physical paper being there. It's about what that paper can actually do for you in the real world. And as we'll see, that stagnant safety, it's a total illusion.
Which brings us to our next section, the cost of doing nothing and the invisible threat to your savings. To really wrap our heads around this invisible threat, we need to define our terms. I want you to think of doing nothing with your money not as a neutral action, but actually as a negative one. According to our source, sitting in cash is defined as a state where rising prices slowly reduce what your money can buy. Notice the wording there. It doesn't say a hacker's breaking into your bank account and stealing your cash. It says the prices around you are rising. The economic environment is shifting while your money stays exactly the same. When your money's just sitting there, completely static, it's totally exposed to economic factors you can't control. That is literally what happens to your purchasing power when you're just sitting in cash. So the crucial point is that cash is not resting safely, it's actively shrinking in utility. The actual number of dollars you have might stay identical, sure, but the sheer volume of goods or services or groceries those dollars can buy, that's steadily decreasing. Inflation is the engine driving those rising prices, acting like a silent, invisible thief. It doesn't take your coins, it takes your capability, your purchasing power. If you aren't aware of this dynamic, you might think you're being super responsible by holding cash, when in reality, you are slowly losing ground.
Let's move to and see how this builds with the $100 example, visualizing the impact of time on money.
Think about a crisp $100 bill. We all tend to anchor our minds to the static value of that number, don't we? We remember what $100 felt like when we were teenagers, what it felt like a decade ago, and what it feels like today. But the reality is that the feel and the function of that $100 are completely disconnected over time. The number 100 is absolute, sure, but its actual value? That's entirely relative to the time period you are spending it in. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact problem we're facing. On one side, we have what $100 buys today. Maybe it's a full cart of groceries, a nice dinner out, or a tank of gas with some change left over. It simply buys more right now. But fast forward into the future. Because prices are constantly going up due to inflation, something that costs exactly $100 today might cost way more down the line. To purchase those exact same things, that exact same cart of groceries or that exact same dinner, you are going to need significantly more money. The $100 bill hasn't changed its appearance, but its muscle, its strength in the marketplace, it's been severely depleted by time and inflation.
Now that we've diagnosed the problem, let's look at the solution. Here is growing faster than inflation, the core lesson for your money.
Here is the absolute, definitive lesson from our source. Your money should grow faster than inflation. We have got to shift our mindset from passive holding to active, intentional management of our resources. We can't just play defense by hiding our money, we gotta play offense. This is the overarching rule for combating that silent theft of purchasing power. Since we know inflation acts like a moving walkway continuously pulling you backward, standing still, which means sitting in cash, guarantees you lose ground. To actually move forward, to build wealth, your money has to be put to work to generate growth, and that growth must aggressively outpace the rising cost of living.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the dynamic it represents. The math here is pretty straightforward. If the inflation rate outpaces your money's growth, you are losing purchasing power in real terms, even if your bank account balance is technically going up. To win, your growth literally has to be the taller bar. It is the only mathematical way to defeat the invisible threat and ensure that the $100 you save today can still buy $100 worth of life in the future.
Which brings us to the most vital consideration after understanding this whole financial reality. It's just not enough to ask if your money is safe. It's not even enough to ask if it's growing at all. You have to ask yourself, is your money growing fast enough to beat tomorrow's prices?